job there, maybe they've gone to another one. So, by not being able to pay them quickly enough, or, to not be ahead of the game in that, all of a sudden your project's getting pushed back a week, 2 weeks, that starts to add up. And, that's something, if you give me the information I need, I see the invoices, I see the work being done, I'm going to release those draws as fast as you can provide the information I need.
Yeah. Early on in our 20s, when Chris and I were learning a little bit about this business, and we were talking to a really rich guy who was deploying a lot of money in Baltimore, he was like, listen, if you want to be in this space, there's two very important things that you need to understand. You have to close on time. You have to close on the date you're going to tell somebody you're going to close. You can't push back closing. And you have to send wires next day as quick as possible. You can't go a week or 2 weeks to do draws. Like these contractors and these investors, like they need the money to keep these projects afloat and keep them moving, or their contractors are going to go find other work, and then they're not going to get them back on that job. So, it's always been important to us to figure out ways, even when we were just the two of us and, in essence, a one-man band, on, hey, you need a draw? Cool. I'll be down there tomorrow. We'll take a look and I'll bring a check with me and we'll give it to you. And then in today's is a little bit more streamlined of cool. We'll send our inspector out there. He'll be out there later today or tomorrow, and we'll make sure the draw gets, and then we'll, he'll hit me up, make sure everything's good, and then we'll send the wire. So I think that's important if you're a newer lender listening or watching, make sure you can get these draws done as quick as possible. And they don't have to be a day, right? They don't have to be a day. They don't even have to be 2 days, but like as soon as possible. No point to wait. It's like, I think that's very, very important. And, on some real estate investors that you're negotiating with on the front end, be like, oh man, 13-3 or 12-2, I can get 10-1. It's like, yeah, but that might be an institutional back lender, right? And yeah, they may be a little bit cheaper, but they're also a nationwide company. They're not gonna be able to do draws quickly. Like they're not going to come out to the property tomorrow to do your inspection. You're going to have to do a full appraisal, things like that. So like you learn how to sell against that. And then, then after you explain to them all the benefits of working with you, then you can kind of back into the dollars and cents and say, okay, well, how much are they going to lend? How much am I going to lend? What's it going to cost with you? What's the cost with them? And it's like, listen, it's going to cost $6,000 more to go with me. I get it. $6,000 is a lot of money, but these are the reasons, you're going to be, all the headaches. So you learn that, right? You learn that from talking to borrowers, right? Sorry, I don't know if I'm frozen or you're frozen. If I got bad internet today or you have bad internet today, it might be me. I don't know. Like
I'm not sure either. You cut out for a second, but I see you now.
Okay, got it. Maybe it's mine. It didn't say I was, but it's all good. All right. One kind of last questions on the private lending stuff, and then I'm going to switch gears just a bit. So right now, I'm guessing it's probably just you as kind of a one-person operation. Mm-hmm. What's your day-to-day look like related to? Because I know a lot of investors at your size portfolio, or real estate or private lenders at your size portfolio, you like talking to borrowers, you like doing, doing that side of it. But like sometimes you get bogged down with paperwork and processing and ordering title work and things like that. Like, what does your day-to-day look like? And like, what are things that, you're kind of looking to, in essence, hire out kind of as you grow?
Yeah. So right now, my biggest focus is setting up all my procedures on the back end. So I'm getting really familiar with Baseline Software, which is the processing and servicing company and origination company I decided to go with. And I've actually been working hand in hand with their founder in building out my company's SOPs. Like I'm trying to dial it down to a T of what it is, because I want to be able to plug and play somebody on the back end for a lot of that admin work. But as of now, I'm pretty much every role. I do already have a bookkeeper who helps me with some of, just the bookkeeping side of things and servicing. But for the most part, it's just me, but it's manageable. I have 17 loans right now, $3.5 million out. And, the software is helping me keep track of that really pretty easily. It's been manageable. So I think eventually hiring one person, but if I'm getting to 25 to 50 loans to get to, where I want to, I don't think I'm going to need more than one or two people. I'm going to have my bookkeeper who can do some of the servicing for me, and maybe one other person. But I do want to get to the point where I can focus on marketing, and I can controlling the underwriting. I think those are the two biggest things for me. I want to be able to handle all of the underwriting and then the marketing. And then obviously if a deal ever goes bad, I want to be in full control of that. But all the keystrokes in the back end, I hope that's so dialed in to where I could really rely on somebody to kind of plug it in, make sure the bank accounts are matching up with the software system, and I can kind of oversee it and review it and have checks and balances. But I think that would be the perfect business for me.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. And I think a lot of lenders, as they reach not necessarily scale, but as they're growing, they have one person kind of on the back end, one person on the front end, right? Back end person is doing bookkeeping and accounting, making sure they can account for all the money, loan servicing, collecting payments. And then the front ends, processing. And, processing is challenging. It's not the hardest job in the world, but it takes time to like collect information, order title, things like that. And you want to be at a point where, in essence, you're on the phone, you're selling the deal, you're potentially looking at the property, and you're like, cool, this is what we can do. Great. You want to move forward? Let's go. And then you hand it off to, somebody, and they map everything based on what you want to do.
And I think you could streamline that by having your processing checklist, by detailing exactly what you're looking for in your title policies, what you're looking for in your insurance policies. And I'm working on templating out emails to where as soon as a deal gets go, I know what I'm sending to the insurance company that of the kind of insurance I need, to the title company, to where it's really kind of almost systemized. And that's why I think it's really important to have like kind of your vanilla structure of the kind of loan you do and the kind of, the fees you charge, the interest you charge. I made the mistake early on of every loan not being exactly the same and kind of customizable. And not that you can't pivot here and there, but like you got to have your standard. And I feel really good and in a good place right now because I feel like I finally have my standard. And now, all right, if there's a specific deal I want to pivot a little bit, okay. But for the most part, this is what we fund. This is what we do. This is our system. And it's kind of plug and play, and it streamlines the whole process.
Yeah, the common trend that we have seen is you can get to about $5 million in a portfolio deployed ongoing and have everything customized, and then after that, it doesn't work. You got to make it more of a widget. You got to make everything kind of the same. That's because here's the thing. There's always going to be some sort of custom structure, like, maybe a reduced or a longer prepayment penalty, a property type that's different, maybe higher or lower terms here and there. So like you almost got to keep everything as consistent as possible. And what else and I don't know if you have or not, but like one of the things I've learned is first off, I don't want to use brain power on that. And second off, I don't want to have to negotiate with people on terms. If I only have one term, it makes my life a lot easier because some of these guys are better negotiators than I am anyways. And I don't want to have to go on, a race to the bottom of like, cool, I'm just going to give you the highest leverage and the lowest, the lowest terms. Like that's what an institutional back lender can do. I'm not trying to do that. This is what we do. In essence, take it or leave it, right? Like there's obviously, relationship and selling, but that in essence what it is. And, if someone pushes and pushes and pushes and pushes, and they finally realize like, okay, this is what it is. And sometimes I win that deal. Sometimes I don't win that deal. But the good news is when I lose that deal, they go to an institutional back lender. And then finally they're at a point where they're like, I can't deal with this institutional back lender anymore, or they can't close on time. They're going to come to me. And then bam, easy sold deal at the terms I want.
One of my biggest pitching points is, a borrower who's had a bad experience with a larger firm. And it's like, look, I'm going to be a little more expensive, but you're not going to have to deal with that with me. Or you thought that was going to be cheaper, but with some of the issues you ran into, or like how we were talking about draws, that took longer, or they backed out of a deal and you lost the deal, what have you, like, you spend a little more and you don't have to worry about that. So I think that's one of the biggest pitching points I've had so far.
So the thing that helped our industry, I'm talking about like actual private capital, not institutional capital, the most is actually when institutional capital came in this space, because then all the real estate investors would go to them first, and then we would get the stuff that had to close, not like subprime stuff, the stuff that couldn't get closed quick enough for one reason or the other. Over 50%, maybe even 75% of every loan that we do is because they went to an institutional lender and they can't get it closed quick enough, and they come to us and we have a week to close it or whatever, a few days. I mean, we'll close it in a day, but like a few days or a week to close it, or they don't want to go. And I mean, there's endless reasons. why that happens. The wholesale fee is too high, right?
Yeah.
And an institutional lender doesn't want to do something that the wholesale fee is too high. They need to close too quick. They can't get access to the property, right? Like I'll do deals. Like I did a deal a week ago where like somebody came to us and said, "Hey, do you have to do an appraisal?" I was like, "We try to do an inspection, but it's not always necessary. Depends on the situation." And they're like, "Well, I can't get an appraisal. It's occupied. I'm buying the property for 400 grand. I have 200. I'll put down. I just need the extra 200. Can we waive the appraisal?" And I'm like, "Sure." So,
Right.
I sent my guy out there. I had him look around the windows just to see if anything was crazy, but I took the risk that the property didn't need a ton of damage. I would have done a loan of 260 or, maybe even more, probably even more. That was, 300, anyways. So it's like, sure, I'll take it. But those are things that like an institutional capital source can't overcome. As a private lender, we can. And it's hard to teach and train somebody, a newer real estate investor, on that, but it's a long game, right? You do it and then they'll know for the next one and you'll get that deal.
And they see how easy it is to work with. So, that's kind of what I'm hoping to do. The Arizona market is saturated with some bigger lenders. And it's like, I want to kind of take my portion of the market share by service. That's what it ultimately comes down to. Like, I'm going to provide a really good service. It might be a little more expensive, or maybe you could get a little cheaper, but you'll see in the end that what we can provide is worth it.
Yeah, absolutely. I 100% agree. Tell us about the book, your new book, Real Estate Side Hustle, and how that book started, why you wanted to even get into writing a book like that.
Yeah, so it's pretty much how you can have a full-time career and still invest passively in real estate. And, that's what I did while I was playing in the NFL. So some of the main pillars are how to buy single family and smaller multifamily, how to get into syndication investments, how to do private lending. And then the last pillar is triple net lease. And if you want to start to 1031 into bigger projects. And I found that those 4 pillars, you can do it off a limited time. You just have to build out the right SOPs, put the right team together, and you can invest passively. And knowing which strings to pull based on what your goals are and where you are in your career. So, being in real estate for the last decade, there wasn't a lot of books that really targeted this lane. And that's what most people are in. Most people don't necessarily want to get into real estate full time, but they're like, how can I invest? How can I grow a portfolio? And I think it's more possible than people realize. And I think this is the book that's going to kind of give people the framework of how to do it if you're a busy professional. So I'm super passionate about it. And within that, that's why the private lending is one of my main focuses now, because I think it's a very good pillar for when you're transitioning out of your career. Okay, how do I start to replace some of that income? Well, private lending is a great source. I don't think it's the end all be all. As you know, you're going to have to pay taxes on it. So, there's tax hits. But for me, I love balancing that with my real estate portfolio of properties. And I think that's a great balance.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I can attest to that. There's so many private lenders in our group and in our atmosphere that are in the same situation where, they have their regular jobs that they like, and, they want to figure out just ways to responsibly deploy their own money. Like it makes like private lending is a good sector that, again, has been around forever, but it's only really became like absorbable where people, think that, can do it themselves probably over the last 10 or 15 years.
Well, what's interesting, and you probably know this better than me, but when I started reading a lot of books on this, they call it different stuff, but like I read a Tony Robbins book and he's talking about private credit, they call it, but it's the same exact concept, and how a lot of even billionaires, they have a good portion of their portfolio in private credit, private debt. Like it has all these different names, but it's essentially what both of our businesses do. And that was really kind of encouraging to where it's like, wow, so wealthy people, they really are investing in these same type of vehicles because they found, venture capital is great, private equity is great, real estate's great, but they're not always cash flow generating, income producing vehicles. And private credit, private debt, private lending, whatever you want to call it, is. So I think that's interesting and something people should take note of.
Yeah. I agree with you. I think it was in Money Mastering the Game book that Tony Robbins said that. It was one of his books. I 100%. I was like, oh shit, Tony's investing in hard money loans too. And then, I listened to like a lot of Alex Hormozy podcasts and his stuff, and he did the same thing. he was lending a few $1 million out to a few borrowers.
Well, because it makes when you really think about it, it makes sense because they're making a ton of money in venture, or they're investing in these private equity and stuff like that. But those don't pay for a while. Like, oh, you might 100x, but it's going to take a decade. Well, you got to keep the lights on and you got to sustain your lifestyle and grow in the meantime. So once I started reading that, I'm like, oh, that makes sense. They have this portfolio, but private debt kind of solves their cash issue.
Yeah, and even though the business has been around for so long, like it's become readily available to a lot more people now than it did in the past. Just because like it's deal flow, right? The name of this game is finding good deals. And like we didn't know anything related to this space at all at the beginning when we started. The only thing we knew about was like, let's go find freaking good deals. Because if we find a good deal, there's no way in hell that a capital investor isn't going to fund these deals because we needed capital back then. So that was the transition. Like we learned that from like going to, a few rich people that we didn't know many, and say, hey, what do you think of this investment? They're like, yeah, it sounds like a home run. Go find me deals that meet this mold and I'm happy to lend on them. Right. And that's what it was. We're like, really? It's that easy? And yeah, I mean, it's not that easy, right? Like there's a lot of work that goes into building a business and doing all that. But like, it went back to like, okay, cool, let's go find lots of deals. And then we realized it's like, well, a lot of deals I thought were going to be easy to find weren't as easy. And, I'm going to have to do real work to find these really, really good deals. So
I think finding a distinct advantage is really important in this business. Like for me, I don't know if you agree with me because I go a little higher than you guys do, but I go up to 75% ARV. But why I feel comfortable is I'm an investor myself here locally. My wife is an agent. I have a couple of really good relationships with contractors. It's a non-judicial foreclosure state. So there's these reasons to where I don't want to deal with the default or foreclosure, hopefully ever, but realistically speaking, it's going to happen. But I feel like I'm poised and in position to really take advantage of that situation to where I'm willing to go a little higher than what you would consider comfortable. But I feel I have a distinct advantage in this market to be able to do so. So, other private lenders or hard money lenders out there, consider that if you have an advantage in some way, how can you get more deal flow and lean into that a little bit? And that's one thing. Another thing that's kind of helped me get more deal flow early on in Arizona is like, okay, I'm willing to go to 75% ARV because I'm very confident in our comping and our BPOs because my wife is really good at that, and I'm having my
I don't know if you lost me or lost you on that internet stuff, but sorry. But yeah, so I agree with you on that. And one of the things to add is if your average ARV is 400 grand and you're lending 75%, you're lending 300 grand, right? So you have $100,000 equity cushion, right? Now, if you're in a market where you have a $200,000, median housing price ARV, and you're lending 65%, that's 130, right? So you only have $70,000 in equity cushion. So again, some of the things you have to take in consideration in this business is dollars and not just percentage.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's a really good point because if if you're only lending 65 or 50%, like people are coming with a lot more money in Arizona and you're shortening your pool because if they got to come with $200,000-$300,000, like not everyone has that, but they might be a good investor. So I think that's a great point for sure.
Like that's a real thing to look at. Like, hey, if you're lending on the guy's buying it for 80 grand, he says it doesn't need much construction and he'll put down like 40%. It's like, yeah, but that's not all that much money, right?
Yeah.
That's a good percentage, but it's not money. It's the same thing with charging minimum fees, right? Like people be like, oh, well, I'm charging 5 points. And it's like, well, if you're doing a $50,000 deal and charging 5 points, you're making $2,500. What do you do? Like, if you're in a state that you're able to charge, what you want, like charge, to make it worth your while. So dollar figure instead of percentage makes a lot of, makes a lot of sense to look into. Devon, this has been great. I really appreciate you coming on. So where can everybody find this book that wants to buy it? I full transparency, I don't own this book, but I actually, am into it. I mean, it makes a lot of sense. Like I'm definitely going to pick it up myself. I think, I'll pick up the audiobook because I don't typically physical.
I do audiobooks too.
I I typically can bang through an audiobook a week in the morning when I walk and stuff like that. Like that's what works for me. And I usually, so I usually just have an ongoing list, but it's definitely, sparked my curiosity to check that out. So where can people find that book if they want to buy it?
Yeah, buy it on Amazon or anywhere you order books. Pretty much there, it's everywhere. And you could also head to my website, devonkennard.com. And then my lending company website is weare42solutions.com. So if you're in Arizona looking for loans, reach out to me there. Or if you're interested in investing, you could always do that as well. So yeah, thanks for having me, Jason. I appreciate it. And man, it's been a pleasure learning from you so far.
Yeah, no, likewise, right? It's one of the best parts about kind of being in a circle of like-minded people is it doesn't really matter background, experience level. Everybody's different, right? Everyone's got different values to bring. I mean, that's the whole value of a mastermind, group in general, and networking with people makes a lot of sense. Yeah, definitely check out real estate side hustle, Devon's book. Also, like he said, we are 42 Solutions. If you're in Arizona and you're looking for a loan, that's great. Maybe you're listening to this or watching this and you're a broker and you might have an opportunity there. Feel free to reach out to them, or just if you're another private lender and you're trying to learn the industry. I know you've reached out to a few other lenders, in our circle as well in different markets, right? Different people are in different spots, and it's good that everybody can share their experiences and kind of have one cohesive thing, because we're all trying to help each other, and nobody God forbid wants to lose any money in this space. But if anyone has shortcuts to help each other, it's definitely a beautiful thing, because there's just not all that much knowledge in this, in this type of business.
Absolutely.
All right, man. I certainly appreciate it. And we'll be in touch. Thanks again for coming on the show.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, man.
Absolutely.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of the Private Lenders Podcast. Please note that the opinions stated by all the speakers on this show are only opinions and not intended for legal, financial, or accounting advice. Please make sure to always check with your own legal, accounting, and financial professionals. If you enjoyed this episode of the Private Lenders Podcast, we'd appreciate it if you would spread the word. Make sure to check out hardmoneymastermind.com, the #1 free community for new and experienced private and hard money lenders.